I
There's
hate
my
when
backup
Jane.
recording going. Wait, hold on.
I hate
Why
when
is
Jane
Audio
does
Hijack
that.
not responding? That makes me nervous.
Oh,
Hold up.
Because you're on 15.1, and every
No,
time
it's
you open an
because
app, it
Chrome
tells
wasn't
you,
running, and so I had to open Chrome. But why does it want to
you
open Chrome?
because you did your session like that when we were using.
Hey, hold on.
Yep.
Yep.
See, that's when the automation gets you.
Yep.
So, see, that's one of the circumstances we have talked about when not to automate things because, sometimes the automations will do things that you don't want them to do when circumstances in the world change. But we're not going to rehash a bunch of old conversations because this is TW86 and we got a guest with us. So, in addition to me and Michael, somebody that might actually say something really interesting for you this week. What's up, Taylor Arndt? Am I saying your last name right?
yes. What's up, y'all?
All right, we got Taylor in here. So I know quite a bit about Taylor, but I'm going to let Taylor introduce herself and kind of, give you the high level overview of who she is and what she does herself, because I might mention stuff she don't do anymore.
Well, thank you, Damashe. I am Taylor Arndt. I am living in Austin, Texas, and I am an accessibility specialist. But more recently, I've turned into a WordPress plugin developer, and I also develop iOS apps. I work for a company called Techopolis Online Solutions, and that is ran by one of our other great friends, Michael Doise. And I am building all sorts of cool AI stuff as well. I'm also an AI enthusiast, so I'm all over the place, but I love it.
Yeah, I was hoping
So
you'd.
did Michael realize that his company's initials spell out TOS like terms of service?
Yeah, I guess maybe not.
I never realized that until you said something. That's awesome. Better be sure to read his TOS. Now I got to see if he even
Uh-huh.
has any on there. I was glad you brought up AI though, Taylor, because you're using AI a lot, and you've actually let us know what AI tools you're using. Run through the list.
Okay. Okay. So I'm using a whole conglomeration of them. So for coding, I'll start off with that because that seems like the most like highly important task that I'm doing these days out of everything else. So the first tool I'm using is VS Code and GitHub Copilot. Very straightforward. Y'all have probably heard of it before. Just that's kind of my specific, coding setup. I do a lot of editing of code there. I don't do all my generation of code there. So I'll talk about that in a minute. I use ChatGPT, and that's mainly for brainstorming ideas, but also learning about new concepts and libraries. Again, as of right now, I don't do a lot of code generation in ChatGPT because I find more efficient ways to do it, but I will talk about those in a second. Now, this is a new one that you guys have probably not heard of. This is called Cursor.ai, and this is one that I use, and it's basically a fork of VS Code. And literally, what it is an AI editor that is a place to add, edit, and write code. Now, the accessibility is a little bit lackluster at best, but the reason that I like this tool is because I can do multi-file editing. Now, it is true you can do that with GitHub Copilot. However, I find the experience very, very slow in GitHub Copilot. Cursor is extremely fast, and you can have multiple files. You can also code in any language. I do Python, PHP, and Swift most often, but it works very well. In terms of cost, you may be wondering, oh my gosh, how much is this going to set me back a month? Well, you know the magic number in AI right now, right? $20.
$20. Yep.
Yep. Now, you may be wondering, why do I want to pay for another tool? Well, the thing is, if you're doing coding as much as I am, I need a tool that will actually be efficient and be able to keep up with my needs. It also uses a whole bunch of LLMs, so you can use Claude, which is made by Anthropic. You can also use GPT-4o and other models in Cursor, and they are very receptive to feedback, although they haven't fixed any of my accessibility issues yet, so I don't know. But it's okay. It's usable, just not very compliant. So I use a lot of different tools in that platform. And I will say is that it's $20, but basically it's based off of fast requests, basically where they're, requests to the LLMs. So if you are doing a whole lot of coding, you may need to upgrade that plan to a higher tier. But I have found that it is a very good tool, especially if you're doing a lot of mass code generation. Of course, with any AI tools, you're going to get sometimes hallucination and things like that. And you're also going to get inaccessible code, meaning that heading levels start with heading level 4.
Hmm.
So those are the kinds of tools I'm using.
So let's take a step back because
Before you get there, because people are going to be looking for it. So this is Cursor, Cursor. Is it cursor.ai is the website?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think I want to take a step back and go over a little bit about your use case of AI, because you don't just use AI for coding, right? You use it for writing and other projects.
Yeah. So mainly the tools that I was talking about were for coding specifically, because that was the first question, I guess, per se. I have a whole other list for writing. I mean, those really include ChatGPT and Copilot, sometimes Claude. So get this, some of the platforms, such as Medium, which by the way, I've started writing on them, thinks that literally my writing is like a robot. It literally flags my writing as being a robot, even though I may not use ChatGPT. It's just because of the way I write, because of me being neurodivergent. So I have to use a tool called humanizeai.pro or something like that. And it literally makes my writing more human. And then after I run it through there, I go ahead and do a final edit to make sure that it looks good. That way it actually can get through AI validation scanners without actually failing. So
That's
that's a weird
interesting.
experience I've had to do.
Yeah, that is interesting as people are trying to combat the use of AI to generate content on their platforms. They're false flagging uh you, and I would imagine probably a lot of other people. If this, what'd you say, humanize AI even exists, that means it has to be a problem that people are dealing with. I maybe should look at that because, well, I don't really need to humanize my writing. I just need to improve it though. So I guess I'll stick to GPT.
It can improve it as well. So like, there's also an AI checker that I use to ensure that my writing is not made from AI. I think I use one by Zero GPT. I think that's the one I use, but there's a whole bunch of them out there.
Oh, cool.
So you're having AI check to see if AI generated the AI content.
I basically have to do that because I need to make sure that my content is not being flagged on Medium and other platforms be written by AI, even let's say I wrote it. Like, some articles I don't have AI write.
So
Yeah.
LinkedIn has a tool, and I don't know if you've played with it at all, that says generate content with AI when you create a new post. Have you experimented with this, and how do you find it compared to some of your other tools if you have?
I have experimented with this a lot. I find it pretty good. I mean, it does use ChatGPT, so it seems like it's on par with ChatGPT.
Ah, okay. And what about the
Because it's
desktop apps?
Microsoft. To be honest with you, I don't mess with the desktop apps. I just use them on web and mobile.
Interesting. I told listeners in 85 that I was going to go download the ChatGPT app and play with it and give a comparison for Damashe related to MacGPT. And as I loaded the ChatGPT website for the fourth time today, I said, I really should go download that app now because I keep going back.
I'm sorry. I thought you meant the LinkedIn app.
Oh, no, I should have clarified that. So are you using the ChatGPT app on Windows or Mac?
Oh, yeah, both. All the time.
Okay. The app or the third-party apps?
The app.
Huh.
Official.
And how are you using that?
I have like a keyboard shortcut set up. I really am still trying to mess with it. I just made a GPT today. It's called a assistive technology trainer, and literally it can teach people JAWS and NVDA and answer their questions. And I used it with advanced voice mode to test out my GPT. I just actually downloaded this today, so I really don't have as much experience either.
Okay.
Well, that is super cool. You have plans to release that GPT, like for public consumption at some point, or I don't even know how that GPT store thing works. I just know there's stuff in there, but I don't even know how you submit something to that store. But are
Okay.
you planning on doing that?
So I'll answer this question in two parts, Damashe. First of all, it's already released in the store. You can type in assistive technology trainer. If that doesn't come up, you can always type my name. And the process of submitting GPTs is in a couple steps. First, you create the GPT, and then you go to a button that says create or share, and it will have three options. It'll say me only, or it'll say anyone with a link, or submit to everyone for everyone. And basically, that means that it will go into the store. I have a GPT right now that has over 1,000 chats, and that is my WCAG 2.2 reference guide. It is absolutely blowing up.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you to talk about some of the GPTs you've created. So your WCAG, I chatted with it for a little bit yesterday, trying to learn some of the fundamentals of WCAG and what's important to be compliant, and how someone could get started with testing using the WCAG, which stands for what?
Content accessibility
Thank you.
guidelines.
Thank you. I wanted to say website, and I'm like, there's no S in there. How? Anyways, so yeah, that's what other GPTs have you created?
So I've got a couple ones that are really not around that much. I have a lesson planner for Python. So let's say you're teaching a class of Python. You can actually have it generate lesson plans that you can follow through with. I have a WX Python, which is a Python framework. I have an accessible coder. Some of these are going to get refined and some of these are going to get deleted eventually if they're not very popular. I also have a WordPress plugin mentor GPT that helps with creating WordPress plugins. A lot of these have not had a whole lot of chats yet, but really right now my WCAG and assistive technology one is popular. I posted about my assistive technology one today on LinkedIn, and it has over 63 reactions.
Very
Yeah.
cool. So I want to slide back over to the coding aspect of this because I've noticed here recently, for example, with GPT, and I need to go back to Claude. I just realized a couple of days ago that I was actually paying for Claude, and I didn't
Are you
didn't
really?
remember that. But with with the stuff that you're actually like most of my coding with GPT or any AI large language models has been just, mostly personal stuff like, oh, I need a script to do this thing on the Mac or something like that. How are you finding the output? And has it improved from when you started, using GPT or any other model for that matter to code up to this point? Like, have you noticed a market improvement, and what are you finding the output? How good is the output for you?
Well, okay, so this is kind of a loaded question. So I'll break it up into parts. I would say, first of all, the output of when I've started coding to now with AI is much better. I have found that Claude 3.5 Sonnet is the best model for coding under two exceptions. One, if you need to search the web, if you've got an error. You can't search the web with Claude. They've not implemented that. Boo-hoo. But also, sometimes when there are information that is not as like old, for example, so like if I don't know, WordPress 6.7, GPT probably already knows about that because it can get from the web, but Claude won't know about that. So things
Gotcha.
like that. Or CSS just had a major update. I'm sure that GPT knows about it, but Claude doesn't. So I'd say those are the two exceptions. And I find that the output is very good. Of course, it depends on the tool that I'm using.
Okay. One thing I've noticed with, and I'm gonna go play with Claude because your part of your answer mirrors what somebody else recently said to me, or probably me and Michael, I think actually, that Claude Sonnet 3.5 was really good at code generation. But what I've noticed with Chat GPT specifically here recently, is I've kind of gotten back into playing around with it, is that it does now seem to be I used to have to prompt Chat GPT like, hey, how do I secure this code? Or how do I make sure this isn't, creating issues or security problems? And now what I notice, and I'm curious if you're saying this as well with GPT specifically, or if it's just a me thing because it remembers me asking this question all the time. That it's prompting you or giving guidelines for making sure the code that you're, generating is secure, or is it doing something questionable, I guess is the best way. Because I had it write a script for me to do something. It was like, you want to be careful using this because you're going to be scraping Amazon's API and they don't like that. I was like, I don't care.
Okay. So yeah, Damashe, that's a good question. I have had it generate secure code. A very example of this is when you're generating WordPress plugins. When you're creating form fields, you need to do a process called sanitization where you can basically, get the output and make sure that it is valid, as they say. And that's a simple way of doing it. Before, it would not sanitize the data. And so when I did some plugin check for security, I have a tool that will help me do that. It will say, hey, you didn't sanitize this form field. What I've noticed in recent times is that it will actually sanitize it when it creates the code because it already knows that I want to do that, but also it knows a lot more about security because the models have updated and changed.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you don't have to prompt it to sanitize it. It does it automatically because it knows it needs to. I'm curious about that plugin design workflow and maybe Taylor's trade secrets. If you can't talk about it, feel free to let us know. But can you give us like an overview of how it is you leverage GPT to start creating new plugins? Because you're using it to help you build things right now, correct?
Yes, and I just for full transparency, I can talk about a lot of this stuff. So I can talk about my entire workflow because that's, I have to explain it to everybody else anyway at the company. So basically, just for context, I am the only plugin developer there. And so I make all the plugins and I approve the plugins and things like that. But the plugin developer process really starts with a fundamental thing. That is the name. Because if you don't have a plugin name, then you're kind of up a creek without a paddle. And the name really, really matters for a lot of things. And so I want to come up with a good name. We are making a plugin. I'll just kind of give a sneak preview of this plugin. It's not all ready yet, but we may be making a competitor to a popular forms plugin. Hint, hint.
Oh man, we need a breaking news thing, Mike. Where's
Right,
your
right.
where's your I forget the name.
Where's my inner
Farrago.
Steven?
Where's your Farrago at, man? You need to hit him with the breaking news. All right. I'm sorry, Tim.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
we need breaking news. Okay, so hint, hint. I may be coming
This
up
is the
with a
closest you get to it. Oh,
Yeah,
I
that
can't
doesn't
stop
go.
it. There we go.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna take
Okay.
the buttons away from Michael.
Okay. So
So you're making a popular form plugin.
I'm making a competitor to a popular form plugin that everybody, at least who runs this show, has a subscription to. And you may know what this is. It starts with GF. But anyway, so the reason that I'm mentioning this right now is because I know it's going to happen, but also because it's a great time to talk about building plugin process. So the first thing that I always do is come up with a spec sheet. It's very simple. I know, Michael, you saw this spec sheet.
So I'm gonna pause you for a second, Taylor, before you get into the spec sheet, because you started with a name. That's the first thing you do. Do you come up with that name, or are you telling GPT, "Hey, I need a plugin that does this. Give me some names."
So at Techopolis, we have a consistent naming structure for
Okay.
our plugins and things. Like they all have the Perspective brand, and you'll see that if you guys go into our store, and
Mhm.
that's techopolis.online. And I can spell that out or put the link in the show notes, however you want to do that, Michael. But and this all kind of goes back also to having a meeting with Michael and the team and deciding, okay, what do we want the name to be? And everything goes through a process of talking to our people that we talk to, like Michael and Damashe and everybody, about okay, what is the need, because we don't want to build something that doesn't have the need, right?
Okay, so you get a name, and it has perspective somewhere in the name, or with your naming structure, and then talk us through the spec sheet and the design of it.
So we write a spec sheet, not always, but most of the time. And we've switched to being a Microsoft 365 shop. So we used to do these in like Google Docs or whatever, but we found that that is not always the best solution. So we actually now do these in a program called Microsoft Loop, which is a built-in program in Microsoft Office. It's a very cool program. It's like a Notion, but it's actually accessible for a change.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm sorry, Mossy.
Oh, I was just saying, wow, because somebody made something like Notion that's actually accessible. I've heard about Loop, but I've never looked at it. So that was just fascinating to me because a lot of the new note taking, compilation, document sharing tools that are out there on the market really are not all that accessible from my experience. So I was just saying, wow.
Like for example, we like Loop because like Michael and I can be in the same document. So we have a workspace because you can create different workspaces. So we have like a projects workspace where we have all of our project stuff. And in that projects workspace, we have a plans or upcoming workspace, or sorry, folder, page, whatever. And then we make a plan. And basically this kind of goes through everything the plugin's going to do, what it's going to, do, how it's going to do it, what field types in this case, what is the design like? It's basically like a specification sheet. What do we want it to do and how do we want it to do it? And we kind of get feedback from people. We also ensure that this is going to be feasible, come up with a estimated timeline, things like that. Once we do that specifically, then it's time for development to begin, and this is actually kind of where we're at now. And this is really where GPT becomes more of a essential tool. During the spec making phase, ChatGPT is also an essential tool, and so is all my other writing tools. But when it actually gets to coding, this is when it really kicks up into gear. So I come up with a file for the main plugin. Now, if you don't know anything about WordPress plugins, you will learn that you need to create a main file. So, like, if you want to call it, I don't know, hello world, right? You could call it hello dash world because PHP likes to have dashes in the file names instead of underscores or camel case, which is basically one letter upper, one letter lower. So first letter lower of the first word and second, upper, the second word. It's kind of like that. You want to have it as dash, right? So hello dash world. PHP likes that. And that really makes sure that the name of the plugin has the name of the file. And then there's like this header at the top, which basically has like the metadata. It'll have like the name, the author, all that crap. It basically tells WordPress what the plugin is. And the reason I say that is because GPT really helps here because it can automatically generate this boilerplate.
Okay. That is definitely helpful because I remember my times just creating single use plugins for a site or something and having to either go look up what is all this, stuff I got to put in the header or, making some kind of text expander snippet or something to make that process easier.
And we also use Bitbucket. I'm mentioning this too because we have a Bitbucket. We used to use GitHub, but because of the looming AI training things, we don't want any of our data being trained on from AI as a proprietary standpoint for the company. So we use Bitbucket. And what is nice about Bitbucket is you can actually share code snippets and I can have public links. So let's say to Mossy, I wanted to share a header plugin snippet with you. I could share that as a public Bitbucket link that you can use and you could download and you can do what you want with it, even if you're not in the organization.
Gotcha. That's cool.
So what have you created with AI?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. I've made so many plugins. I made a WPAI Search, which is basically a website searching plugin, and that is, you could search posts, you can ask questions. I've made a headings plugin where you can adjust the headings of, like, for example, the latest post block. You can adjust the heading levels and things like that, which is actually in WordPress.org, but I'll talk about that later. You can adjust the like images and things. So that's a premium version coming out. I made this Paid Memberships Pro Magic Links plugin, which is absolutely amazing. And you can get like magic links sent to your email if you're using Paid Memberships Pro. It's on a lot of websites that we're working on right now. And I've also made a Beyond the Gallery, which is our shortcuts website. And we have a shortcut submission form literally using AI. And it pulls the shortcut data from the Apple API and it allows you to submit it. And it works very well, and it will submit it for review, and then people can review it and put it back on the Beyond the Gallery site. It will get the icon as a feature image. I've made a lot of plugins. Oh, and this WPGPT one where you can control your entire WordPress website with AI.
Okay. So now you got to tell people about how that, like, not the inner workings of how you wrote that code, but like how that actually works. Like, describe this to me, like, because that sounds like something I may want to go play with.
What one specifically? The
Uh,
WPGPT?
yeah, that one.
Okay, so WPGPT was literally, it's kind of simple in nature. But let's say you want to control your entire site. Let's say you want to make a whole bunch of pages and you want to activate plugins. Basically, that's kind of how it works. So each button, basically, like, so I have a little starter prompts that you can use, or you can type it in yourself. But like you know, that way you don't have to actually type it all in. You could just hit these little starter buttons, and they, help you be able to fill it in quickly.
Hmm.
It's almost like the suggested prompts in ChatGPT. And what they do is, for example, you could say create page home or whatever, or create page, I don't know, login, and you could do that. You can say create page or create menu, whatever, set navigation. Like you can create an entire menu and set a home page with this GPT and create users, update comments, all this stuff. Basically, anything you want to do with WordPress, you can do it in GPT. So basically, each action of the chatbot has its own, if you understand code, it's like a switch statement. So it has its own switch, and then it has its own like process logic that goes behind it.
Okay.
You also, I don't know if you can talk about this, so tell me if you can, but you also mentioned something about WP Search GPT. So you could build a site and feed a GPT with data and then go to WordPress and search that.
That was called WPAI Search. So I've got that right now in iAccessibility. Is
Okay.
that specifically what you're talking about?
Yeah. So if you, so that's running on iAccessibility. So how does the GPT work there for someone who may not have visited that? Like what can they expect, and how is the experience different than just WordPress?
It's not actually a GPT. It's basically using the API, and it kind of indexes the entire site. So I could ask it, I don't know, what is the newest app in the app directory or things like that, or what was the newest IA cast, or just different questions about the iAccessibility website. I
Mm-hmm.
will admit, however, I do want to eventually rewrite that because I'm having, like, it's not answering all the questions in the precision that I would like it to, but that will come in time. With all that stuff, there's issues and limitations with like the context window, which is basically how much the AI can hold before it starts forgetting.
Gotcha. So, Taylor, what have we not mentioned about AI that you want to talk about? Are you using AI in any other creative ways that we haven't talked about? Do you use voice
Hmm.
AI or Suno, or are you generating videos or images?
I'm generating images from time to time, and there's a new model called Flux. It's actually, I think it's a local model. It's actually one of the best AI images right now you can use. I'm also using Suno from time to time when I want to mess around. But really, my advanced voice mode, like the assistive technology GPT and a lot of other things, like that is my biggest use of advanced voice mode because the assistive technology GPT I just made today is literally teaching people through advanced voice mode.
That's a great feeling to get. Does advanced voice mode, when you build out GPTs, have the emotion in the voice as well?
There's actually no specific settings for advanced voice mode in the GPT builder.
Ah, gotcha.
Not that I was able to find. However, if you do find them, I would like to be aware of them. And the other thing too is that if you put GPTs in the store or otherwise, you can actually update GPT. So if you find it doesn't like, do something you don't want it to, or you want it to do, I could just update and say, hey, do this instead, and can update it and then like kind of, have a new version to the users.
You mentioned something briefly, and I'm thinking of listeners who may not be as familiar with GPT and stuff. What is local? And like when you say local GPTs, what does that mean? And what are some tools you've used?
Local GPTs. Okay, so you're talking more about like the
Like
on
local
device
models.
stuff, right?
Yeah, like local models.
Got it. Okay, so that's a whole other can of worms. Really, so I'm working on, in a sense, training my own local models to do certain tasks, and that is going somewhat well. But a great model that I'm using right now is Llama. Now, there is this new model. If you have the hardware to do it, I recommend doing it. So it's called the Quen 32B Instruct, and it's supposed to be as good or better than Claude GPT, really, Claude 3.5 Sonnet at coding and other tasks. So if you have that ability, you can try it on your own machine. It's 32 gigs or 32 billion parameters, which is basically how big the model is and how much it can hold in a sense if you don't know what that means.
Mhm.
So you're going to need a sizable computer to run that. But if you can, I recommend trying it because apparently it's like the best model out there for coding right now.
Yeah. What was the name of that?
It's called the Quen 32B Instruct or something. Quencoder. I'll have to send it to you if I can find it. I heard about it yesterday on a YouTube video, and of course, I was watching the YouTube video when I was not by my computer. So, I just, I need an easy way to save all these YouTube videos that I watch because I need to reference these like on moment's notice.
So wouldn't it be nice if your phone would do a thing or your computer, either one, either device you happen to be watching, say a YouTube video on like that, and you could say like, hey, remind me or snip the last, 2 minutes and remind me about this thing or add this to my notes or whatever, right? Like
Yes.
that's where I'm wishing that's why I want to get to because a large part of my day is spent manually entering things in some form or fashion that is more tedious than me just, if I made enough money, I would hire somebody that just followed me around constantly. And when I said, oh, I need to remember such and such, they would just jot it down however they jotted it down. But I have to do that and I don't want to.
I agree. Now, so the thing is, like, I am really trying to get Microsoft Copilot right now for business. I mean, I'm saying this because, like, it can kind of do that. But it's ungodly expensive. So I'm like, okay, I wish I could make a cheaper solution. But stay tuned. I'm working on a compromise.
How
Oh,
so she can't share that with us. How are you using Meta in your life?
Meta, oh my goodness, I'm using a lot of Meta Ray-Ban stuff for like navigation and maybe reading things that are not accessible. Videos, I'm taking a lot of videos, and guess what? I have Waymo in my town. So I'm
Oh,
doing a
you
lot of
gave it
Waymo.
away.
nice.
My next question was going to be how are you using
Oh,
AI and transportation? Oh.
dang it. I'm sorry.
That's where Taylor gets excited. So yeah, you should. Did you know about that, Damashe?
I did not know about that.
Yeah. So
So,
how's that working out?
Man, it is amazing. So I wanted to go get Panda Express today, because I love Panda Express. Didn't work out the way I really wanted it to because the Panda Express is at the University of Texas. And if you know anything about that, you know that it's a huge, gigantic campus. Well, unfortunately, Waymo had decided it was going to drop me off, mm, basically pretty far away from the student union. I've
Oh,
had
oh,
it.
so
you were at the math and science building, weren't you?
I was at Chipotle.
oh, but
No, I'm
that's
sorry,
that.
I was at CVS.
That's an interesting thing that I think we think about, but it's going to solve a lot of problems when driverless cars are regular, but it's also going to introduce a lot of new problems as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Another
gets down.
issue I had is I was going to get some meals at one of the restaurants. It dropped me off in the middle of a grass patch downtown.
Wow.
So I'm actually making a Waymo video. I have it almost done, and I probably will get it done by this weekend, and that will be on my YouTube channel.
All right, we'll make sure we link people to your YouTube as well. And Taylor's been on YouTube for I don't know how long you've been on YouTube, but you were on YouTube when I met you, and I met you probably 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years
Yeah,
ago.
3 or 4 years
Three or
ago.
4 years ago. I've not always been consistent due to crazinesses, but I've been trying to make videos. I mean, I posted one a couple weeks ago and it got like over a few hundred views about advanced voice mode. So go check that out. It was 3 ways I used advanced voice mode. I actually helped Jeff Bishop present at the Washington Council Convention.
Ah, okay. That is cool.
I've been
I'm
doing a
saying
lot of
that,
presenting on AI lately. So
and I have found this model, the Quinn 32. Hold on. Yep. Hugging Face is hosting that.
Hugging, that is correct. Hugging Face, if you're not sure, is like a model repository. So it's kind of like
Yep.
a test bed. And you can do Hugging Face chat for free. And if you happen to be on Hugging Face and you want to follow the company's account, it's Techopolis 2024. So you can actually upload models and things like that for people to try. And yes, we may be uploading our own local models for you to try. So if you want
Oh,
to follow us on Hugging Face, which I think you could do, it's Techopolis 2024. Or if you just want to see what we're up to, you can do that as well. And but you can also, the reason I say to create an account is you can use the Hugging Face chat for free and you can chat with all these local models. Even if you don't have the resources to do those.
oh,
Like
that's pretty cool.
and you can also train models through Hugging Face. Granted that will cost money, but you can train them and you can what's called fine tune them. Basically, what you're doing is you're training it on a subset of knowledge. So, like for example, you're training it on all accessibility stuff, so it'll be more specialized.
Cool. Well, I could train it on all of the technically working episode
You
transcripts,
could,
right?
you
And
could.
and then I could be like, what episode? Instead of me guessing, which I still think my guesses are pretty good most of the
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
But I could ask the model directly, what episode did we talk about such and thus and so on, and actually get the right answer
Or
and not be an episode off.
or you can have basically what's like, I made a Python script to train this to train the same way. And then what you can do is you can load them into what's called Llama, which basically means that you can try it on your computer. And I was able to load a model I trained about Python and other things. I literally trained it on my Mac and Windows. And I was literally able to load it into Llama to try it on my computer, almost like I downloaded it. Now, the problem I've had is trying to put models into mobile apps, but gosh, don't get me started on that. But I can train them locally too. I actually trained it on 16 gigs of RAM.
Wow. I would think you would need more than
NVIDIA.
that.
So the thing is there's different I'm going into the weeds here, so just tell me if I'm going like way off the rail, but I'll make this simple. There are methods that you can use to train LLMs that may not always consume a whole bunch of resource. Some of these models include some of these methods include low rank adaptation, or LARA for short. And what that basically means is that it's going to kind of train some of the model, right? But then, like, you know, leave some of it as like untrained in a sense, but it'll still be very accurate, but it will make sure that it is optimized for lower resource usage.
So would an equivalent of that be kind of like, say, I remember the early days of search, and you would search for a particular search term, and maybe your first five results were very specific to the thing that you were searching for. But as you worked your way through the search results to lower down the list, you got the kind of less specific they were. Would that be sort of an equivalent of
Yes,
what you're talking about?
that's something you could really say. Um, and there's also what's called like quantization, where you're kind of compressing the model, but you're still trying to keep its original value. So there's a lot of different things. And again, there's a lot of places you can read more about this kind of stuff because, if this doesn't make sense.
Okay. You're doing a lot with AI. You mentioned that you have been, even doing a lot of presentations and talks on AI and the usage of AI. One question is, what does kind of a typical work day look like for you? And I know no work day is typical, but what does
Okay.
kind of a general day look like for you when you get up in the
Well,
morning?
So it's been a little interesting, and I've got a whole other can of worms that I'm gonna open. So again, just excuse me if I'm like rambling like crazy. But as y'all know, like, work from home can sometimes be a blessing in disguise. It can be great, it can be terrible. I have found that my productivity kind of goes way low when I'm not, like, when I'm at home. But then oftentimes, like, I can never shut my brain down. I don't know if you can relate. So,
Mhm.
why I'm saying this is because things have started to change, and my apartment has a business center where I can go and I can like go work at their conference rooms and their lounges, and like it's almost like a WeWork, but like in my apartment complex.
Nice.
And so, yep, I can do that. And the reason I say that is because it gets me out of the apartment. And then when I actually come back to the apartment, I actually feel like I'm in my home again and at my work. So, the reason I say that part is that first, I get to the apartment complex office. In fact, now I'm actually starting to like be more friends with the apartment like office and leasing and, maintenance people. And a whole other thing, I'm so glad that the office might be switching to Google Fiber because right now they got AT&T and ugh. But anyway, that's a whole other. I know you guys have been talking about internet troubles and boy. But yeah, so we have a Google Fiber at our apartment, but the clubhouse has AT&T. So the reason I say that is sometimes it's not the fastest, but it's doable for what I'm doing. I'm currently at my house because it's kind of late. But what we're doing right now is, I get to the clubhouse around 8, 7:30. I start at 8 usually. Because I am a manager, I also have to manage employees and contractors. So usually I will have a meeting with the employees and contractors at like 8:30. And then usually from there, I will probably, we always are on Discord or FaceTime and hanging out with all of our friends. So I usually hop on there and we'll kind of code and hang out all day. And usually most of the day lately, I've been coding. Sometimes I have to do accessibility testing, or sometimes I have to be in client meetings. I know tomorrow I got a really early meeting, so it'll be a fun day. But no work day is the same, especially at Techopolis.
Gotcha. Um, then that's generally the case when you're, running your own business or involved in a small business operations. No day is the same day ever.
Right. And I am super glad. This is a whole other thing too. I've tried to run my own business. It's not for me. And I'm super thankful now that I'm actually a employee. I don't have to worry about pesky self-employment taxes.
And that's one of
Oh
those things you got
man.
to worry about when you're your own boss, right?
Yeah, it's one of
Yep.
those things you got to worry about is taxes. When you are the owner of the company, you have to worry about your taxes. And if you hire people, then you have to worry about their taxes. So,
Oh, trust me. Oh yeah.
yeah, and don't try to
But
Uber trick all the time. Like that's not going to work for you.
but no, it's great. I mean, and I also have to do payroll. So keep in mind that I have to every other week we do payroll. So that's also part of my job, and part of my job is taxes and accounting and all that kind of stuff. So I'm the operation. So basically, my title is called Chief Accessibility and Operations Officer. Lately, feels like it's been Chief Accessibility and Plugins Master.
But at least you're enjoying it, and that's
I
the
am.
big thing that matters.
Michael's like, should we change your title in Gusto? I'm like, no. I don't want to change it to Chief Accessibility and Plugins Master.
Well,
And maybe
Taylor,
AI enthusiast as well.
So, what are kind of some things that AI, and it doesn't have to be specifically like GPT or anything like that, where it could be image generation, it could be video things, but what are some things that either AI is doing that are unexpected to you, or some things that you really would like to see AI able to do that would kind of make life better in different ways?
I feel like streamlining of like documents and like notes and things. One of my hardest problems I have is like being ADHD and neurodivergent, keeping processing information is very difficult at times. So it'd be like very nice if I could say, hey AI, based on this client meeting, do you think that this client would be a good fit for the business? Because I've made too many bad decisions and bad clients just because of my brain not knowing how to vet them.
So you want AI to have a deeper understanding and ability to predict things moving forward?
Yes, I do.
Interesting. Okay.
I just
Well,
want AI to accurately analyze video from a camera so it can, tell me real time who is that ringing my doorbell. Like, I know I can go store people's
True.
faces with some of these cameras and be like, oh, well, that's your, son, so you should probably let him in. But like, give me a description of the person at least. Like, this appears to be a UPS worker, and they have a box. It's like, oh, okay, I'll see what's happening with that box.
That is interesting. See, we have a different way of handling packages because I'm an apartment. So we have a package service, and we know that they're there because we have to sign for packages. So we don't have a doorbell just because we don't have like outside access. But I understand how that would be a interesting thing that you could want.
Yeah, and I was recently, like the news is kind of getting around. It got around enough that it got to me, about the new little $200 drone that'll follow you.
Oh
Um,
yes.
and the first thought I had was, and usually I'm one of those people. It's like I'm not interested in drones at all. Like it's not going to benefit me, and plus I'm gonna spend $1,000 on this DJI drone and then crash it instantly, which means I just burned up $1,000.
Ugh,
But that $200 drone that will follow me, I was like, oh, I could walk around my yard or send this around, my property to look at stuff, except I wouldn't really know what it was, you know, surveilling. So it would be great if the AI could tell me like, oh, well, it looks like somebody's been walking through this particular part of your yard and you may want to or different things. Like I don't really have any specifics. I just, felt like the drone at $200 was very affordable. I almost pulled the trigger on it. I was like, wait a minute, don't really have a use for it. But if I had real-time access on my phone where it could describe that video, and I want to be careful here to say I'm not trying to replace audio description artists that do that job for television and movie content. I just want something that's going to describe a video that's on my phone or from, whether it's from a drone or from my camera roll, right? Because somebody wants the video I took or recorded of the kids doing something. Like, well, let's make sure I send them the right video, not the wrong video that
I
had kids.
agree.
But we'll see.
You know,
We'll see where it
we'll
goes.
see.
It is very interesting times for sure.
yeah, and think about someone who I think it was Andy Lane said on a podcast that I heard him on. He used to think about technology in like decades time frames, 5-10 years, and maybe 2 to 5 years. Now he's thinking about technology in weeks and months time frames and where we'll be moving forward. So super excited. And Taylor, we definitely appreciate you jumping in to share some of the ways that you're using AI in business for, while you're working. Go over real quick how people can reach out to you, what people can do to get more information about some of the plugins you're using, and mention anything that we may have forgotten to talk to you about.
I think we really covered a lot of it. I will say that I am all over the web. I am on Mastodon, although not as much anymore because I'm on Blue Sky. But anyway, I'll talk about that in a minute. I'm on Mastodon if you really want to follow me. So it's TAYARNDT at Techopolis, TECHOPOLIS.social. And Techopolis is going to be something that you will need to know about because I'm all over, Techopolis this, Techopolis that. Email really, best way, especially if you want to talk about business things. Taylor TAYLOR at Techopolis, TECHOPOLIS.online.
She had to think about how to spell it too. I'm glad to know it's not just me.
My brain was thinking about something else. I was thinking about like that. We have a huge intersection by our house, and I thought that a car was gonna get into a huge accident. So my brain kind of was like, "Whoa, what's going on over there?" Um, You can find me on Blue Sky. I believe it's TAYARNDT at bsky.social or something like that. And I also have a digital accessibility starter pack. So if you guys want to follow people in accessibility, you can find that on my profile or somewhere on my LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn, just Taylor Arndt. The company Techopolis is on LinkedIn. You can search Techopolis, or you could probably find it on my page because it has it in my experience. The store is techopolis.online, and there's like a products, and you can search for things. We also have a new all access plan, 3 different levels. The personal is 30, which gets you 3 sites that you can use it on, and you get all of our plugins. And then you have the nonprofit, which you have to show verifiable 501c3 or other nonprofit statuses in your country. And then we also have the business plan, which is for unlimited. By the way, nonprofit's also unlimited, and that is $100 a month for business and 50 for nonprofit. So we just announced that a couple days ago, and so if you're interested in that, please check that out as well. And also, if you would like to check out other items that we have a couple like services and things. We do accessibility testing and app development and all that kind of fun stuff. And of course, AI. So yeah, that's a little bit about everything else. I'm also on Medium as well. So it's like medium.com at Taylor. I don't know, something like that. So I'm all over the place. I'm sure you'll be able to find me.
Just search for Taylor Arndt.
NDT.
TAYLORARNDT. I knew there was something before the D, and I got stuck. TAYLORARNDT, and you will find her for sure. Thanks, Taylor, again for coming on and having a great chat with us. We truly appreciate it. As usual, we want to thank all of our listeners for listening. Share the show with a friend if you think they would enjoy it. A special shout out and thanks, as always, goes to our tip jar supporters because, again, you can spend your money anywhere. So the fact that you choose to spend a little bit of it over here is tremendously appreciated. You can find that guy right there on, he's not on Blue Sky.
I
Taylor's
am
the first
actually.
person to throw in a Blue
He's
Sky.
actually on Blue.
I am
He's
on
Well,
on.
Blue Sky.
well, I don't know anything about the Blue Sky because I ain't on Blue Sky. So anyway, you can find him at Payon, Payown, at dragonscave.space. That's DRAGONSCAVE.space. Mike was supposed to put in the space thing right there, but he didn't. I'm on Mastodon at Damashe, Damashe at unmute.community. And you can use the hashtag technically working and do whatever that case thing is where you capitalize the first letter of
Camel
each
case.
separate word to use that hashtag if you don't mind. And email us feedback at technicallyworking.show.